Welcome to FM26, a podcast about thoughts on Football Manager. I am JMThoughts, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 with the wonderful Got No Game, also known as GNG. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, JM, for having me.
Do you want to give a bit of an introduction, maybe, in terms of what your current saves are, your kind of background and connection to Football Manager?
Yeah, so I am I started off on YouTube and have just moved to Twitch recently. Currently doing a series on YouTube called Jobless Greatness, where I have taken over Banbury United and trying to win a Premier League title. And on Twitch, I'm currently managing in the Greek 2nd Division, doing an island-only journeyman, and we are in Crete at the moment, trying to complete a pentagon, not knowing if it's even possible in the game to do it. So yeah, we'll give it a go anyway.
Currently in a shed in a thunderstorm, so...
I'm currently in the garage, hopefully won't get blown away during the pod, but if I do disappear, you know what happened.
We'll just improvise, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on here was because you were one of those creators who was doing a Let's Play right up to the end of FM24, so you kind of ran that full 2-year cycle. How many previous games did you play before that?
So my first Football Manager game exactly would have been LMA on the PlayStation, but first proper one would have been Champ 0304, and I would have played then up till 2008, and I actually didn't play Football Manager from 2008 until 2023. Didn't play it at all, didn't watch any content or anything, and then just got back into it, watched some YouTube videos of Zealand, Work the Space, Llama, etc. And then just felt the bug of I'm going to try and create content myself. So 2023 I started on YouTube with UCD here in Ireland, and just done the PC at home, very poor quality. Looked very much like a picture book with the issues. But yeah, just from there kept going. And as you said, kept going through 24 for the 2 years. Kept trying to come up with ideas. And then now on to 26 and a new era of Football Manager. And great to be a part of it.
Yes. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about. This is, usually we focus in on a topic. And the topic for this episode is going to be Football Manager 26. So I suppose my question straight away is, what's your experience of Football Manager 26? There's a lot of opinions out there. What's the GNG take?
I think my opinion has changed 3 or 4 times in the couple of weeks it's been out. I can remember the Thursday night the beta came out, loading it up and absolutely hating it. I was lost. I didn't know where anything was. I started with Porto and I couldn't find half players, club information. But then playing it on, started to learn the UI, really liked the match engine, the new graphics, even though I missed the shouts, really missed the shouts. And then I think since the hot fixes have started to come, I have enjoyed the game more and more. After both my main saves in the last week, and have got the urge, I want to play it more. I think that's a good sign. I think it's a good game. I will say it's a good game. There's definitely issues that will hopefully be fixed. They've said it, SI in their statement, they're going to work on issues. And I think as the cycle goes on, the game is just going to get better. But it's going to take patience. I know people are going to be frustrated by it, but it is going to take patience. And we have to just believe that it's going to get better.
I think that's a really interesting summary. And I think it is probably one of, the opinion that we're hearing the most is that idea of fire, brimstone, pitchforks, heads rolling. And I think there is a degree of truth to that in the sense that, you're almost being a little bit defensive of your position there, because this is a game that is badly reviewed at the moment on Steam. It's a game that's been really controversial with the community. And the line that's kind of come out from Miles in his press conferences before the game was released, who's been a bit kind of under the radar since, was this is just about people getting used to it. That's the thing, it's going to be hard for people to get used to the game, and then once they do, it's all going to be great. And I think it sounds to me like I'm hearing there's a degree of truth to that like that early pain has been something you've worked through as you've played the UI a bit more. But then there have been another layer there where it's not just about it being new, it's about maybe it being not completely thought through, or there being problems with some of the screens, but you're kind of from an optimistic position that that's already starting to kind of be fixed. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair. I don't think anyone can deny that when it was released, it wasn't a finished game. I don't think anyone can deny that. The bugs, the small issues that are in it that have been fixed, even things like the spacebar coming back, things like that clearly hadn't been fully thought through at the start. And I think it's going to be a live game throughout this year. I think it's going to change and evolve. But I still think there's going to be frustrations with it. I have frustrations with it. One thing I've said to people is during the first half of games, I feel like a spectator. There's nothing really to do. You're not going to rip up your tactic in the first 15 minutes. Well, normally you're not going to rip up your... you can't shout. You're kind of just watching. You get kind of lost watching the game. And you lose that feel of being a manager. It's meant to be a simulation of being a manager. You lose that a little bit. It becomes a game more than that simulation. Hopefully there will be some changes to that. If the heat maps, the pass maps, the average positions, they come back, you'd feel more involved in the game. I think we didn't realise how much we used the chalkboard, for example, because we were all using custom skins, we were all using bits of the chalkboard, but we weren't going in to look at the chalkboard, if that makes sense. And I think that's going to take time to get used to. I understand people's frustrations. I understand why people don't like the game. I think the reviews, there has been a bit of a pile-on in the reviews, and I think everyone can see that. It's not the 7th worst game on Steam of all time, or whatever number we came in at. I think we all know that, and I think it's fair to say that you have to take some of the reviews with a pinch of salt, but people have fair views on it that they don't like, and we have to listen to them too. And as an FM player, we have to try and maybe make the game easier for people who are struggling, if we can in any way. As content creators, if we can do that, hopefully we can get people back to enjoying the game that we all love. In the end of the day, we're all FM lovers in what the game we play, so hopefully we can get more people back on board.
The second episode of this season is going to be, I'm going to talk to Pokes FM about the communications. He's got a comms background, as do I. And part of the thinking there is that maybe some of this could have been avoided if they'd had a bit more of a thought-through strategy for how they were going to approach it in both communicating where the game was and a plan for kind of inducting people. It's kind of interesting what you were saying there. I was having a conversation with my wife who knows nothing about Football Manager, but she pointed out quite rightly that if you roll out a new HR system or a new expenses system or a new CRM, customer relationship system, in a workplace, you will have workshops, you'll have a 6 months plan for changing that over, you will prepare people. Football Manager kind of, I think I said this on the WFM show, it feels a little bit like a finance module or something, or a HR module or something. There's so much information in there. And yet we've just gone from one that looks completely one way to something that looks completely different, and kind of dropped people who've been going with one particular way of it for a decade. I don't think it's a surprise that the initial response, without having, we've had content creators saying, well, why didn't they do videos of showing the differences and showing people around the UI? Why didn't they hold people's hand through this? Because it's a massive change. And it feels almost a little bit like if we park all of the sort of bugs and problems to one side, even if that wasn't in the game, they've just kind of dumped it and then run off and gone, good luck, you'll struggle with this for the first 40 hours, bye. And I don't know if that's part of it. I don't know if that's fair. It feels like this was maybe always going to happen, and I don't know if they've had the best approach to it. I don't know.
I think their communication at the start when the beta came out, the 90-minute watch along with Jared Bowen, I don't know if that helped people. I don't know if you're going to get used to the AI watching a West Ham striker sitting there watching someone else play the game. It's not... I think they could have done a week-long Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before the beta came out off the UI. This is the portal. This is the first team. This is your club page. This is what your transfer budget is. I still go around looking for my transfer budget, and it's hidden away, and I can't understand why you'd hide away something like that. So, and it's probably, you get used to it, and it'd be just like a click of the finger, you'd think, right, there's my transfer budget. But at the start, it wouldn't have helped, or would have helped, to have that explained. It maybe have Jared Bowen there doing it in a video if you had time. He's a busy man down in that relegation battle, but you know, a snappy 10-minute video. This is what's in the portal. You know, this is what's in, and going through it, and that would have maybe brought new players as well as the hardcore. They've mentioned the hardcore. You know, we're not going to bring all the hardcore with us, is what I think Miles said in that GQ interview. You know, why not try and bring them all with us? You know, why not make that aim? You know, they're the hardcore. They stuck through the 2 years where there was the same cycle of game. Why not try and bring them all the whole way through the new era? As I said at the start, it's a new era. Have as many people going along the train journey.
When we look at the journey that Football Manager 26 has been on, because this is in effect Football Manager 25, really, that's just been reworked. You mentioned it being unfinished. It feels to me that there were some decisions that have been made that maybe have been a bit confused. So that the big one, I think, was I will talk about this until the cows come home, because I find it so insane, this idea that people don't use inboxes anymore. I'm like, what world are you in? And like people don't use email. Like, maybe managers don't use email because they're talking face to face, and maybe they do use text messages, but like, that was something that was in FM25. They just got rid of it. They just, so like, you had no inbox, you had no way of processing this stuff, and that feels like such a bizarre decision. And then they've rolled back on that and gone, oh, we do need it. Well, I don't know what they call it now, but it's basically the inbox, isn't it? It's like the message hub or some nonsense.
Portal messages.
And it looks a little bit like WhatsApp, but it's kind of like email stroke WhatsApp. It feels like they made some silly decisions. The same with like pulling shouts out or whatever. It's almost like they didn't really necessarily, either there's different views on the game, or internally within SI, or maybe they didn't quite get their research right when they're looking at their player base. Because the shouts is such, you mentioned it earlier, like, it's such a great example of where they've gone, well, they don't happen immediately, so we're pulling them out of the game. If that's the narrative we want to believe. A little bit of me thinks it's just they didn't have time to put them in and they've kind of an excuse, but we'll leave that aside. But as you said, like, a lot of this is role playing. You know, people put their suits on, they play the game, they do the shouts. So it's so strange to remove that from the game. It stinks to me of them not really getting it. Like, they haven't 100% got what made people want to play Football Manager, whether it be 23, 24, whatever. And then they sort of made all those changes. They had this grand vision. If you believe the stuff they've put out, Miles then played this game at Christmas and went, this is awful, cancelled it. But that meant that, like, I've been saying this to a few people, if you look at that timeline, they actually means they only had about 6 months to completely rework FM20, or maybe 8, 9 months. But the window of time they've had to rework this game is not great. Do you think if they had not gone in that strange direction, and maybe they got it right the first time, and even if they then had struggled with the Unity conversion, so maybe we'd still skipped a year, but that year had actually been working on FM26 rather than 3 years building up to FM25, then having to restart all of that in less than a year, do you think it would have been considerably better, or do you think we'd still have a lot of these problems because it would have just been different?
I think if they had said, we're going to take a 2-year break here to make FM26, yeah, you'd have a better game now. You'd have a more finished game, maybe more polished would be the word. I think you'd still have bugs. You may still have issues. They probably will be able to fix them more quickly because they have had time testing. I don't know. No, I don't understand the background of computer game making. It's not something I can barely play the game, never mind make it. They may have been able, maybe they could have had more of a 6-month beta period if they said, look, there's going to be no FM25 because we're going to put all our resources into making this new game, this new engine, this new era. I still think there is, as you said, this really is FM25 2.0, you could call it, I think. And you can see that in some screens are pop-ups and some are full screen. It looks kind of like they've just pushed in screens from 25 that they knew they weren't going to get it finished, and they've just put it in to have it there. I'm sure by the end of 26, a lot of those screens will look a lot different. And I think something I'm expecting is when FM27 comes out, it's going to look very, very similar to 26, but more polished. And we're going to get the backlash again of, well, they've done nothing here. They haven't changed the game. But I think it's going to be about each year now building on the blocks they've put in place now, which aren't perfect. They're crumbling on the edges in places. But I think, I definitely think they could have had a longer 2-year cycle of trying to perfect instead of maybe the 9 months you said, or 8 months. And they've ended up with an unfinished, good but unfinished game that has a lot of improvement in areas.
You can see the way that they're adding stuff back in, and there's to me there's like multiple layers. There's those bugs that were just meaning the game was completely broken, and obviously they've tried to fix those, and that's kind of not ideal. And then there's the bugs where it's it kind of worked but it wasn't great, and they're now incorporating that feedback and doing some work on that. And then obviously there's going to be bigger stuff. Neither of us work in video games, so this is sort of the fan perspective, I suppose. These games are getting more and more sort of complicated, and the other games that I play are big, like things like Civ, CK3, Dwarf Fortress, like big kind of simulation games that do sort of evolve over updates. They're iterative. When they move from Crusader Kings 2 to Crusader Kings 3, or from EU4 to Europa Universalis 5, or whatever, or Civ 6 to 7. All of these companies are having the same sort of problem, that as they're having to go into a new era, they're having to take a lot of stuff out. And then in all of these cases, they have like a huge backlash. And in all of the cases except Football Manager, they actively choose to add the stuff back in as DLC. Whereas Football Manager sort of doesn't work in that way, but instead it sort of iterates, so it's almost like we are buying the game every year. Whereas for something like Paradox, they would release, I think it's like 3 DLCs a year, but if you add them all up, it's probably about the same as Football Manager. To some extent, is it forgivable that they've released a game that is not quite complete? Because it seems to be what is happening all over the place, and at least they're sort of not trying to weaponize that and say, okay, we're going to give you the base game and then we're going to charge you for international management, or we'll pay £5 for the chalkboard coming February. Or do you take that line that a lot of people I've seen on Reddit are taking, which is, you should release a finished game, it's unacceptable, we should stop, we've paid money for this, we should stop cutting them slack, and then sort of seemingly anybody who sort of is arguing against that is like, well, why are you defending a big multinational corporation? They can't even do the one job that they're supposed to do. Where on that scale do you think, in terms of this was inevitable and we should kind of give them a break, and they've had 10 years to develop the previous one, it'll get better over time, let's continue to support this studio, to they failed in their core purpose, it's unacceptable to release an unfinished game? Where on that scale are you personally?
I would probably be somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's unfair to complain about a game you paid for being unfinished. But at the other hand, it's a very complex issue you've raised there. I think you have to maybe give some leeway, because of up until FM25, and the cancelling, SI would have had a lot of credit in the bank with the games they provided year on year, the value for money of the hours we played. I know I didn't play many years, but that was nothing to do with the game. In the video game market, it is one of the best value for money games up until this year for sure. But if you look, thousands of hours for what it is compared to FIFA, EAFC, and microtransactions and all that side of sports gaming, Football Manager hasn't gone that way, and there has to be some credit in the bank for that. But as I said, it's still people paying their money for a game that hasn't been finished. And that's why I think you have to understand people's frustrations in some of the reviews. Now, some of them are over the top. We know that. That's always going to happen. Social media is always going to be over the top. You know, we know that both sides are always going to be over the top. So I think you have to be a compromise in the middle somewhere of this game is unfinished. It's not good enough as the wind picks up. So, you know, the game isn't finished, which isn't good enough. But come out and say that, which they have to be fair, and fix it. And then we'll support it if you come out and fix it. And as you said, don't come out with a DLC, a spacebar DLC, €10 or whatever. But yeah, I think there has to be some compromise in the debate around that. But hopefully, as time goes on, maybe that can be forgotten and forgiven as a better game develops over time.
Some people who are listening to this episode might not have played the game yet. They might not know. You know, they might be waiting, or they might kind of they've seen all of what's going on. So maybe we talk about some of the finer details of FM26. What do you think are the elements of the game that are good? I guess it's a slightly different question in terms of what are you enjoying, but kind of you take that for what it may be. Like what's kind of the stuff that you're currently working through with that game and going, I really enjoy this, and is kind of in the positive column.
I really like the new tactics, the in possession, out of possession. You have to have both set up. The fact you can tinker around, there's real flexibility in the way you want to play. If you want to play 4-4-2 long ball, you can do it a lot easier. Maybe, you know, you can get everyone behind the ball. You can do things like that. Or if you want to create a real life tactic, and I've seen Musterman has done it on a number of occasion videos, you can match a real life tactic a lot better in FM26. Other areas, I really like the transfer room, the in and out. I think we've all been frustrated with a player at the club you want to get rid of, and you cannot get rid of him. And it seems the transfer out is a real help with that. I found that anyway. I'm not sure, you know, if you're managing lower league, would that work as well? I'm not sure just yet. I'll soon find out at Banbury. But other things I have liked, it's a simple thing, but in the transfer history screen, you can now see the profit you've made in sales. And I think it's such a small thing like that, but that creates the story you want in FM Manager. You know, we made a 20 million profit on that striker. We invested it into the team, and we got promoted that season. You know, that's as you said earlier, Football Manager is a role-playing game. You know, you create your world, and that's part of it. And that's the kind of stats we want in the game. And, you know, the heat maps and all that are part of that. You know, like, I spotted we're out of position a lot, so I changed my tactic, and that was my tactical genius showing. You know, you create your story, and it's all what we want to do in FM26. And yeah, I think with the UI, if you want to go on to maybe the more negative side of it, I think some people have said about it's more clicks for less information. I can see that element of it too. I actually like the UI in a way of it presents information to you, and then you can drill down and find more information. I really like that. Maybe we need a way of finding that, how you do that easier. And that's, as I said, going back, maybe the tutorial videos that should have been had at the start by SI. But I think, yeah, it's going to take time, the UI. I don't think it'll be the same UI at the end of the cycle as it is now. But hopefully people will give it that chance and won't get too frustrated and walk away. But yeah, I think that's the element we need to build on, is stuff like the tactics screen. As I said earlier, the match graphics, I really like that. Yeah, those are the elements I'm liking so far.
I kind of agree with you that I've heard a lot of people complaining about the pop-ups or the drilling down or the use. I really don't understand the use of space one, because yeah. I'm flipping between FM24 and FM23, and FM24 does not use space well. Like, there is regularly pages where like the whole bottom is just a blank purple something. Like,
and a lot of people had custom skins that use the space more, so we're getting back used to the base skin here.
That's true with that hardcore audience. Yeah, that they're kind of not necessarily judging like for like there. Like, I think There are clearly some pages where it's strange, but they kind of fall in the unfinished camp. I do feel like, for the most part, a lot of the information is there and it's well presented. So, like these sort of the portals and then the sub portals for each of these areas of the game. I don't think these are terrible. Like, I don't know about you. I don't think these are awful. You know, like you kind of go into your squad and then you can click through to dynamics and you get that information. Now, there are rooms for improvement on a lot of these screens, but there's some screens here I really like. Do you have I'm a big fan of this one, for example. I quite like this screen. Do you have a top screen that we want to show the people who are choosing to watch this podcast?
Green. I have one I hate. If you want to go with that one
Let's
first,
do that. Yeah, talk me through. What's the one you
it
hate?
is the training screen.
Through here, and we
That
get
one
to
I
talk.
just cannot. I can't look at it for more than. So the first thing I've done on every save is delegate training and not gone back into it. So that is just.
Do you think this screen is salvageable? I'm going to stop sharing now because people who might just be listening to the podcast, I don't want to mess them up. But do you think that screen is salvageable?
I reckon it is. I think you can make it a lot easier to make your own schedule, load up a schedule, etc. And then you're going to be spending less time in that screen for a start if you can do that. So that's a screen that can definitely be saved. I really like the tactic where you can like give both your in and out showing where everyone's going to be. I don't actually like the combined. I haven't really got round to that one yet.
Yeah.
I don't think my in and out of possession are different enough to kind of make it so it kind of just looks like the in of possession anyway. So, but yeah, I like the tactic screen. I'm not a big fan of the team instruction screen where you have all instructions shown. You have to click the arrows. I think if they made that where it was more the wheel on your mouse could flick through it quickly, I think that screen you could be a lot more user friendly. But the actual in and out possession on the both screen, I really like. You could spend ages in there tweaking your tactic. I really like the visualizer too to see how it works, and you can see build up each third of the pitch. I really like that screen. I think that makes you wonder why was that not in FM before now? Like, why was that not there to see how your tactic works? But yeah, those are two screens definitely. The visualizer screen and the tactics with the in and out. I really like those screens.
I would say, as someone who's currently simultaneously playing FM26 and FM24, the quality of life things work both ways. Like, I think there's stuff in
Yeah,
FM26 that I go back to FM24 and go, why isn't this here? And then there's stuff in FM24 that I'm frustrated isn't in FM26. So it's not kind of a clean cut kind of thing.
what are your favourite screens then, and what's your least favourite screen?
I really like the thing that I like the most is the 2D match engine in between highlights, the display.
Yeah,
And to some extent, that's why I'm not missing some of those past maps and heat maps and stuff, because I'm slowing the game down and I'm watching.
yeah,
So I kind of am getting that sense anyway. It's like I can see if we're going down one side of the pitch because I can see it. Now, I get that might not be for everyone, and I'm not discounting that it would be nice to have them back. But I'm not missing them as much, I don't think, because of that feature that I really like. The in and out of possession is kind of nerdy tactic stuff that I don't really like. It's helped and I found it really interesting, but I know that over the course of a say, the way I tend to play is I will create a philosophy and then I'll kind of stick to it and I'll be more
Ru-
interested in the
Ruben
storyline.
Amorim style.
Yeah, oh God, no, I don't like that idea. But I don't like having to change my tactics for big games. I don't like having to adapt to the
Yeah,
opposition. I like to develop players within a system, and it's the player development I find the most interesting. So I've had fun playing around with it, and I agree with you that it's way more in depth, and I really like it. But a little piece of me is a bit like, oh God, like my story with Football Manager over the past kind of 5 cycles has been they're just adding more and more tactical complexity, and I have no interest in it. So I'm just like, are you just making the game harder for me? All I want to do, like, I'm very happy to plug in a 2-3-4-1 Kengan press because I don't care about the tactics. I almost want an overpowered tactic because I want the underdog story. I want to, like, I want to be
yeah.
able to beat Manchester United with a Serbian second tier team or whatever. Probably not a Serbian team, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I would want to, do that. That's what I want. I want to embarrass Manchester City or whatever. That's why I play this game. So some of those, it kind of feels like a different game in the sense that like it's making me think more about the tactics, and that's good. But it also means with the UI as well, it's a much more intense game, and it's not a game I'm going to at the moment because I want to relax, which is why I'm playing both. Because sometimes I'm opening up FM26 and I'm playing it, and then sometimes, if I'm particularly tired or a bit ill, I just want to click through screens on FM24 and know I don't need to worry about in and out of possession, or I don't need to worry about not knowing where the finance is because it's more comfortable. Are you finding FM26 more taxing, or are you kind of relishing the challenge, or is that worn down now with the number of hours you've sunk into it?
I think you are right. It's not a game you're going to relax on a Friday night on your laptop. I think an element of that may come when they fix the network saves. I know there's an issue with online saves, and when the draft mode, I don't think that's going to come back in FM26, but if that does come back, playing with your friends is definitely going to be more relaxing than spending an hour deciding between a screening midfielder and a pressing midfielder. But yeah, I don't. Am I relaxing? No, I am. I have found enjoying it more since I started my more long-term saves. I have begun to enjoy it more because you're building that story in FM. I think you can kind of forgive the UI and all that because you go into your own headcanon about, well, I'm here at this small club and we're battling relegation. We have this vital game away. What are we going to do? And we win a 2-1 with a 90th minute winner. The keeper was up for the corner, whatever. You're not thinking, well, I couldn't find my recruitment budget in more than 4 clicks or whatever. I think that's what needs to come over time, is building that story, building that role of being in your own world. And that is something as well, I think, the immersion people have said about it's not as immersive a game. And I've got that too, especially the around the leagues. You have to go looking for that more, and that takes you out of the world of FM when you have to think, well, I want to know what happened in the French league. I have to go looking for it, or I have to go to this screen, and then I have to go to that. It takes you out of your world. And hopefully, maybe one of the quality of life fixes is a quicker around the leagues page, and something I've noticed, and something I didn't notice in FM24 that I even cared about, was the social media side. Yes. I probably looked at that screen all the time and never really cared, and now it's gone. I do actually miss it.
Yeah, and that's an example of where it may not have meant anything, but we made it mean something.
Yeah.
And this is deep lore for the people, because this is going back now into COVID era. But it's a great example of that story, which is that Pokes FM was doing a streaming save, and one of his players had a surname, and I actually, for the life of me, can't remember because it was so long ago now. But then we went on the social media page, and there was someone else with the same surname, like calling for him to get the sack, and so we then decided that must have been the player's mum, and she was annoyed that he wasn't starting, and like that kind of world building opportunity that came from that, and that became then like a running joke or whatever. And even when you're playing on your own, you notice those things, and yeah, by stripping that away, the most repetitive thing that I wouldn't have cared if they'd got away would have been the bloody press conferences, and they're still in, and they're still at the same questions. So there's a bit of an inconsistency there that they're like,
sometimes the positive reply moves to the bottom in the press conference now, and that's changed. It really has.
So but that's a question for me though. Like, is that a good or a bad thing? Because actually, press conferences are miserable. And just knowing that you could just click the left-hand one on FM24 and it's probably going to be fine is a good thing. Like, I don't want you to throw me off and make me have to pay attention by moving it to the other side occasionally, because I'm not enjoying this, and you're not going to make me enjoy this unless you're radically overhauling it. So actually just throwing a curveball in there to make me pay attention.
I've done it several times where I've been doing the clicking through the press conference and it has moved. So out of nowhere, I just make a negative comment out of absolutely nowhere. And I'm like, what did I just say?
And I think that kind of Yeah, that speaks to me a little bit of the tension between like, is it supposed to be a game that's like you've got to pay attention and the immersion within the press conferences, or is it something where actually for parts of the game you can kind of phase out again? I think one thing I will say for the in and out of possession is on the save that I'm streaming. He says, having been ill for 2 weeks, so not streamed, but is a journeyman from a long time ago that I've ported through from FM23, and I actually did enjoy thinking about the in and out of possession from the player's perspective. An example with this is I had a centre back that was a really good, creative kind of ball playing centre back, and I had a DM that was crap at that. And in previous football managers, you couldn't have done much about that. Like you play a DM and you're playing a ball playing centre back. That's fine. But obviously, with the in and out of possession, you can say actually this centre back, when we're in possession, can step forward and be the playmaker, and the DM can cover for him. But then when we lose possession, we can fall back into a more rigid shape, and so it's almost like the tactics can reflect the players, or you can say, well, this guy, I really want this guy to get goals and develop as a young player, but he's not quite the same. So let's kind of tweak the formation around them, and I think the in and out possession has enabled a lot more of that. Whereas I think some of that, like that example with the centre back, you couldn't do that to the same extent that you can in FM26. So there is potentially more opportunity for depth there in storytelling in the tactics.
Yeah, I think so too. To use my own example, when I took over the club in Greece, we did not have any fullbacks of any quality. So I've used the new tracking winger role to play a three at the back and the wingers come back. And that's something I maybe you could do in FM24, but you probably wouldn't work as well. And then, as I said, you use the visualizer to see, okay, that might work. That might be a stopgap until January when we can bring in a couple of fullbacks. And that can be part of your story. You know, season one I took over, we had no fullbacks. We had to play this tactic and it worked. It saved my job. Or, you know, I think there is that flexibility, as you said. And yeah, definitely the tactics in and out. You can create a philosophy at a club maybe around the players that you happen to just find. I know one thing I do a lot is I disable the first transfer window. So you have to use the players you come in. And yeah, you have to build a tactic around those players. And now you can do it both ways, in and out of possession. You know, you can make your centre back push up, as you said, into the midfield. Or you can make a midfielder drop back into the centre back and be a solid defensive team. And maybe that would be your culture going forward, is Jose Mourinho football, you know?
Yeah. So if we think we're time traveling forward and we're in maybe March, what would the game have to look like for you to be a very happy GNG? And that might not even be the changes that they've made. It might be like you kind of progressing in a save or whatever. What's the ideal FM GNG look like in March 2027?
Well, I think, yeah. Well, I think by March there has to be no crashes, no bugs. We all know that. I think maybe the UI, some quality of life stuff, you know, simple things that maybe they didn't think of, but that everyone else has thought of now, is like customizable the attribute colors, like something simple like that by March, being able to do that.
Now I think that were they putting that in this week? I think possibly.
It's only presets. I think there's like four presets, and you choose between the four. So I think a problem with that is when you have a lot of players who are at a very similar level, it just looks all green, and you're just like, well, what's the difference between? But yeah, so something like that, you know, maybe find a way to bring back the stuff that people want, like the average positions, heat maps, etc. The match highlight page you mentioned with the 2D screen, maybe that could become more customizable, that you can have stuff on there, the league table up fully. You don't have to click in stuff. I think quality of life things, if they come in by March, will make a big difference. And of course, hopefully by then, I'd love to see international management back in by then. Hopefully taking Ireland to the World Cup that we've qualified for. But yeah, that would be great. I hope it's also, I really hope it's not a separate mode. I know some people have mentioned it may be a separate mode. I'd like to see it integrated in the game. I wouldn't mind if it doesn't be compatible with current saves as such for this edition, but I'd hate it to be a separate mode that's kind of fair. If International Man's coming back, let's bring it back fully and improve and let people enjoy it.
International management, I would rather. Yeah, I wouldn't actually mind if they brought it back, but you couldn't manage two teams. But I think it would be good to have it integrated. Yeah, like I don't see them not doing that because obviously they made a big point with women's football of doing it that way. People were saying, "Oh, you're going to have different," and they're like, "No, no, no, you can move between." So
And I think that was a big loss for the game at the start, is not having international management in with the women's game, because that is what a lot of people know women's football from, is watching England win the Euros, watching England get to the World Cup final, the great Spanish team that won the last World Cup. That's what people know, and that was a way of maybe getting people into the women's game more, was having that international management. And I think that was a big loss at the start. I can understand maybe they couldn't get it right, they wanted to leave it out until it's perfect, but yeah, I really wish it had been there for the women's game at the start of this cycle.
I agree. I think I said this on the WFM show that for me, my excitement for women's football was managing AFC Wimbledon's women's team. And maybe it was naive of me, but they're in the third tier. I think I thought they would be in England third tier. They're not, and managing internationally, which is also not in. So, like, it's a bit like, okay, well, I am still glad it's in the game. I'm doing a Nottingham Forest women's save off stream and stuff. Like, it's interesting, but the real things that excited me, and I think those will come. Custom databases will probably bring that in. We know international management is going to come into the game as well. I really don't know whether to start my main save because it is a journey save. I don't know whether to wait. I would love them to tell us when international management is coming, even in a very rough way. Like, are we talking months? Well, yeah. Are we talking like January or are we talking June? Because if it's January, I'll wait. If it's June, I should probably crack on. And we obviously don't have that information. And I also slightly wonder whether, has that been affected by all of the fixing they're having to do? Like, was that an announcement that maybe was a bit premature? I don't know. But I agree with you. I would hope that it's sooner rather than later. But I'm a little bit worried it'll be like day one of the World Cup in real life. Here's the international management mode, yeah.
Half time in the first game at the World Cup, here you go.
Yeah, technically we got it out before the first game ended at the World Cup, yeah. We're kind of approaching the end of our time. What's your predictions for the content that you're doing? Do you think you're going to be able to go from the obscurity of Bambury, is it, to
Banbury United, yeah.
Banbury? I thought I was like Bamford, Banbury. Apologies to all the
I
people.
would like to sign Patrick Bamford for Banbury at some point.
Well, that would be good, wouldn't it? Do you think it's looking a bit cagey right now, isn't it? Look, give us a plug for why people should follow along with that journey and what you expect it to look like.
Well, one of the things you're guaranteed with any of my content is bottle jobs. They will happen absolutely constantly, whether it's league titles thrown away, leads in the 90th minute. That you can come and laugh at my misery. That's my main selling point of my content, is come laugh at the misery. Can I achieve it? Look, part of the fun is not achieving things in FM as well. One of my favourite saves I think ever was the Wick Academy save I did in FM24, and the aim for that was to win a Scottish title, and I didn't even come close. But I still
remind people how many times it took to get out of the first league.
Out of the Highland League, it took 5 attempts. We won the league 4 years in a row, and then lost in the promotion playoffs. You have to go through 2 playoffs to get out of that Highland League, and we lost. I think it was 4 years, and we finally got up on the 5th attempt. And then we got into a rivalry with Peterhead that went from League 2 in Scotland up to the Championship. I remember mocking up a John Cena The Rock WrestleMania promo where we were The Rock and Peterhead were John Cena, and it was once in a lifetime meeting for a decider. I think the game ended 0-0, which kind of wasted my work. But yeah, I still occasionally look at the Highland League to see where Wick are now. So one ambition is to get over to the Highlands to a game at some point. But yeah, that's part of FM is you become attached to these clubs that like I never heard of Wick Academy. The reason I picked them is they're the most northerly professional club, something like that. I think I should really know if I'm talking about my love for them, but yeah. But yeah, it's just that.
Wick is pretty close to the very top of Scotland, so I think
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I remember a rivalry was with Bora Rangers, who are like right beside them. That was a big derby in the Highland League. Fans wanted to win that, and yeah, that's actually my ambition for FM26 is just create more of those stories. I think, hopefully, yeah, long live the stories of FM, because that's what we all want and it's what we all talk about. We don't talk about the game we played. We talk about the story that we created, and I think that's what we all want to do. And hopefully that becomes easier.
Yeah. But when we look back in 5 years' time, it's not going to be, I wish that popped up in a different way. It's going to be, I signed.
I wish that screen was full screen and not.
Yeah. That's not going to be the story. Well, thank you very much. If people want to follow along, what's the URLs to go to?
On YouTube, it is FMGNG, and then on Twitch, it is FMGNG. Yeah, keep it simple.
Lovely stuff. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts on FM26. It's been a real pleasure. I'm a big fan
Thanks
of
very much, yeah.
your YouTube stuff for the last year or so. So lovely to have you on board. Do go check it out. Thank you. And thank you for listening to this episode. Season 3 now with video. I've seen the direction of travel podcasts are going in. I can only resist for so long. Well, at least you get to enjoy a little bit of Frank while you're listening to the podcast if you're watching on YouTube. If not, carry on listening to the audio version. All is well. So good to be back. We had a big old break between season 2 and 3. Quite a short season 2. But we're back now with a much more regular schedule because there is a lot to explore. There are a lot of thoughts out there about Football Manager 26 and Football Manager in general, and I'm hoping to capture some of those interesting thoughts and interesting takes. But for now, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will listen again soon. Goodbye.